Airlines are flying high thanks to bailouts right now, but when this bailout money goes away, which airline's gonna be on top and which airline's gonna be bust? What's up everybody, I am Jaspreet Singh and welcome to the Minority Mindset. When this pandemic started, the first industry to get hurt were airlines because borders were shut down, people were scared to fly, and the people that wanted to fly couldn't because of lockdowns. So airlines saw their revenue fall by 90% almost overnight. The airline business is unique because the cost to operate an airline is flat. Like whether a plane is full or empty, you're gonna have to pay for a tank of gas, air attendants, and a pilot. For an airline to make money, they need to sell around 73 out of 100 seats on an airline. So every seat that they sell after the 73rd seat is their profit. And if they don't sell 73 seats, that means that they are losing money to operate a plane. Well, when these lockdowns started, airlines were selling about 5 seats per 100 seats. So they had the same costs as usual, but they had no revenue coming in. And then to make matters a little bit worse, most airlines didn't have any cash in the bank. Many of the major airlines had already spent all of their extra cash on stock buybacks to make their stock prices higher as a way to reward their owners and shareholders for a profitable 2019 and 2018. Then came this pandemic out of nowhere, and the airlines were kind of like a seagull caught in an airplane's headlights. The airlines were in a pickle. They had no savings, they had no revenue coming in, and they still had the same costs and expenses to run their planes. That's when the airline stocks tanked. Delta went from trading at around $60 a share to $20 a share. United went from $90 a share to $17 a share. And American went from $30 a share down to single digits at around $8 a share. Every investor in America was wondering if the airline industry was gonna go bust because the airlines had no more money. And that's when the government stepped in and they bailed out the airlines with a $50 billion bailout. On behalf of all the airlines, I would like to thank all the American taxpayers for their generous donation. Now, with airline stocks near their multi-year lows and Warren Buffett selling his airline stocks and government bailouts, you might be wondering if you should invest in airline companies and if you should hit that thumbs up button below. Well, I have some good news because by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly what's going on with the airlines. That way you can make a smart decision with your money. Some of the most successful investors in the world have made their money by finding distressed companies and then they bought their shares for cheap, and then the company turned around and they were able to make a huge profit. Now people are trying to figure out how to do the same thing with airlines. The interesting thing is that there's a lot of similarity between investing in airlines in 2020 and investing in car companies back in 2008. During the 2008 crash, the auto industry tanked. GM and Chrysler went bankrupt, and Ford, Nissan, and Toyota were selling for dirt cheap. The people who bought Ford for $2 a share were able to sell their stock for $15 a share, which is a 750% return in just 2 years. The reason Ford was able to survive this 2008 crash is because their CEO, Alan Mulally, sensed some trouble back in 2006 when the economy was still relatively good. And so during that time, he went out and he took out as many loans as he could. This way he had cash to revamp their business, Ford, and this $23 billion or so of debt was their operating capital to help them survive this 2008 crash. Applying that 2008 information to 2020, your question is, will the company I'm investing in today have the cash and resources to survive this pandemic and economic slowdown? Because if your company goes bankrupt before airlines turn around, then your investment is history. You want to start by looking at a company's financials. You need to know how much debt a company has, how much cash they have access to, and what their expenses look like. While this might sound really hard to do, it's actually a lot easier than you might think, because all you have to do is go to finance.yahoo.com or go to Seeking Alpha, enter in which airline you want to research, click the financials tab, and all that information will be right there. What you're gonna see is that some airlines have a lot of debt, like American Airlines is sitting on over $20 billion worth of debt, while other companies like Southwest Airlines aren't. Southwest is only sitting on something like $6 billion worth of debt. Compare this with a company's revenue and their expenses, and then you'll get a general idea of what your airline's bank account looks like. But you don't want to just look at the numbers solely. The next thing you want to look at is seeing which airline people want to fly with. If people are scared of getting sick, then there's a good chance they're gonna lean towards an airline that will help kind of make them feel more safe. But at the same time, that also means that an airline will make less revenue because they might be blocking out seats. So it's kind of like a weird balance. You have to imagine that this will want to push people to fly first class because that will give you more room between people, and Southwest doesn't have a first class option while Delta and United do. And Delta and Alaska Airlines have said that they'll be blocking off their middle seats, which is very good for the consumer, but that could mean that these airlines will make less revenue. United, on the other hand, said that they will try to block off the middle seat, but they can't guarantee it. Then you want to look at what a company is doing to innovate and cut costs. American Airlines said that they'll be cutting something like 30% of their workforce, but they're technically not allowed to fire anybody until September because they got this bailout, and that was one of the kind of provisions in the bailout that they can't fire anybody until September. But they're letting the employees know this summer that they'll be getting fired. That way they can start job hunting early. Delta is fighting this pandemic on two fronts. First, they are cutting their expenses by 50% because they are laying off employees and they're chopping flights. Second, they are investing in their brand's image because they want people to assume and think of Delta as the healthy airline. Southwest prides themselves as a low-cost airline, so they're hoping that this reputation will help them once people want to start flying again, and they're cutting different air routes to save money, and they're offering their members double points to fly this summer. And United Airlines brought in a new CEO who was pretty blunt, and he came out and he said that he's not even considering bankruptcy right now, and then he went on to call it dumb, and he said that that will be the last resort for United Airlines. And then he said that he's gonna try to block off middle seats, but they can't guarantee that. So if a plane is more than 70% full, then you have the option to reschedule your flight and not have to pay a fee. Excuse me, can you stop coughing in my airspace? So now, you looked at the airline's financials, and you looked to see which airline people will be drawn to, and you looked to see how these airlines are innovating. The next thing you want to look at is what's happening in the economy and how this affects your airline. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but if you are interested in staying up to date on what's happening in the finance and business world, well, that's why we created the free Minority Mindset newsletter, where our team first breaks down the top finance and business news, and then we show you how this news affects your wallet. That way you can be smart with your money. This newsletter is completely free, and you can subscribe to our finance and business newsletter by clicking the link up here or by clicking the link in the description below. By the way, our financial news emails are different from our financial education emails. Airlines have already gotten a big bailout, but this bailout money will eventually go away, and the question is, assuming they don't get another bailout, is how long will it be before people feel safe to fly again, and which airlines will be able to withstand this slowdown in the industry? Well, more wealthy people and businesses have been turning to private jets as a way to socially distance and travel. But for everybody else who can't afford their own plane yet, we won't know when people will feel safe to fly again until we see it happen. I mean, everybody has a guess. Some people say it'll happen this summer, some people say it'll happen once we have a vaccine, and some people say that it will never happen. I can't predict the future, but what we've seen happen in history is that when things are bad, people tend to think that things will never be good. And when things are good, people tend to think that nothing bad can ever happen. If you ask me, of course people will feel comfortable flying again. It might take a little while, but it will happen. It's like when people said in 2008 that real estate will never recover and nobody will ever want to own a home again. And it's like in 2000 and 2001 when people said that nobody's gonna ever want to use the internet. Yes, more people are flying more now than they did in March and April 2020 when the lockdowns were in full effect, but it's gonna take time for the airline industry to fully kind of go back to what it was. Plus, flying isn't just about taking your family to Disney World. It's also about flying for business. In 2019, there were about 460 million business trips inside of the United States. Now, there are none happening. Companies have pretty much shut down business travel indefinitely, and we don't know when they will open that back up. The risk here is that if your company sends you on a trip and you get sick, the company doesn't want to be liable for you financially or morally. This is where the uncertainty is, because we don't know how long it's going to take for people to feel comfortable flying again, and the longer it takes for people to start flying again, the more companies that won't be able to make it out of this crisis. Like after 9/11, people didn't feel safe to travel, and so US Airways and United Airlines were pushed into bankruptcy in 2002, and Delta was pushed into bankruptcy in 2005. And then Delta and United came out of bankruptcy a few years later. Right now, the airlines are able to survive because they got a big check from the government with this bailout money. But this bailout money will eventually go away, and if these companies are still bleeding cash, then we're gonna see airline companies go bankrupt. So if you're investing in airlines, you have the potential to make a lot of money once things go back to normal with people feeling comfortable flying again, but that comes with a big risk because we don't know how long that's gonna take. And that risk wasn't one that Warren Buffett wanted to take, which is why he sold his multi-billion-dollar stake in Delta, American Airlines, United Airlines, and Southwest. That's why I always say investing has risks. You are never guaranteed to make money when you invest. You might even lose money, and this is more of a riskier investment, so you have more chance of losing money, which is why you should never blindly listen to a random guy on YouTube. When it comes to investing, there are a couple ways that you can invest directly into airlines. If you believe strongly in one airline, you can invest directly into an airline like Delta or United or American, or you can invest into an airline ETF like Jet, and this way you get exposure to a bunch of different airlines. Again, I'm not trying to tell you what to buy, just giving you an example. If you want to invest in any of these airline companies or an airline ETF, you need to use a stock brokerage, and if you're looking for a good one, I have linked a couple of our free partner stock brokerages for you in the description. But now, when you invest in individual airline companies, you have the opportunity for the most upside because if the airline turns around, you can double or triple your money very quickly. But it also comes with the most risk because if the airline you invested in goes bankrupt, then all of your investment money goes to zero. When you invest in an airline ETF, which is essentially a big group of different airline stocks. Now, if one of the airline companies in this ETF goes bankrupt, you're still okay because there are a bunch of other companies in your fund. So you have less risk, but less risk also comes with less potential upside because now some of the big winners in your fund are gonna be balanced out with some of the losers. So you wanna weigh your investing goals with the amount of risk you're willing to take. And again, if you're looking for an easy way to stay up to date on what's happening in the top finance and business news, or if you're looking for a stock brokerage you can use, I got some resources for you in the description below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, share it with one friend, that way we can help spread the word. If you're looking for ways on how to find a good company to invest in on the stock market, I already made a video on it, and you can watch this video on YouTube by clicking this button right over here. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep hustling.